The war was coming. Everyone on Station 9 knew it. The Armada had already destroyed 17 star systems, and now they were heading straight for human space. The Galactic Defense Fleet had gathered everything they had: 700 warships, 2 million soldiers, and more weapons than anyone could count. The station was alive with movement. Soldiers ran through hallways. Officers shouted orders. Engineers worked day and night to prepare the ships. Everyone had a job. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone mattered. Everyone except Han was a maintenance technician, 3rd class, the lowest rank. She worked in Hangar Bay 17, fixing small problems on landing craft and fighter ships. She cleaned fuel lines. She replaced broken lights. She checked for cracks in the metal. It was boring work, but she did it well. Nobody noticed. Had been on this station for 3 years. In that time, she had never received a single word of praise. Her supervisor, a large alien named with 4 arms and no patience, never spoke to her unless he was giving orders. The other technicians talked to each other, but never to her. The pilots walked past her like she was part of the wall. Sometimes wondered if she was actually invisible. Maybe something had happened to her, and she had become a ghost without knowing it. That would explain why no one ever looked at her. Tonight was worse than usual. Fleet Captain was giving a big speech. It was supposed to inspire everyone before the battle. All personnel were ordered to attend, well, almost all. Essential maintenance workers had to stay at their posts, had expected to be included in that group. At least then she would feel important. But had walked right past her station without saying a word. He took the other technicians with him. He did not take her. He did not even look at her. Sat on a metal crate behind landing craft 7 Delta and watched them leave. The hangar fell silent. The lights dimmed to their night setting. She was alone. She thought about her mother. Was 63 years old and dying. The wasting sickness had taken hold of her 2 years ago, slowly stealing her strength, her memory, her smile. Had not seen her since joining the fleet. Earth was far away and transfers were hard to get. She had applied 8 times. 8 times they said no. The first rejection said her skills were needed here. The second said there was no transport available. The third gave no reason at all. After the fourth, she stopped reading the explanations. They were all just different ways of saying the same thing: you are not important enough. Pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. The metal floor was cold. The air smelled like fuel and rust. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the hum of the station's engines, a sound that never stopped day or night. She started to cry. It was not loud crying. Had learned long ago to cry quietly. When you were invisible, you did not want to make noise. Noise made people look at you, and looking led to trouble. So she cried in small, choked sounds, her face buried in her arms. She cried for her mother, who was dying alone on Earth. She cried for herself, who was living alone in space. She cried because in 3 days she would turn 25 and no one would know. No one would care. There would be no cake, no song, no message. Just another day of invisible work in an invisible corner of an invisible hangar. When was the last time someone had said her name? Tried to remember. A week ago, 2 weeks. She could not find the memory. It was like trying to grab smoke. The harder she reached, the faster it disappeared. Maybe had said it once months ago. Maybe. Or maybe he had just said "you there" like he usually did. She could not be sure. She was 24 years old. She had a job. She had a uniform. She had a small room with a bed and a window that showed only stars. But she did not have a single friend. She did not have a single person who would notice if she disappeared. The tears came harder now. She pressed her face into her knees and let her body shake. There was no point in holding back. No one was watching. No one was ever watching. Above her, the landing craft sat silent and dark. She had fixed a problem in its fuel line just that morning. Tomorrow, some pilot would fly it into battle, never knowing that a girl named had kept him alive. He would not thank her. He would not even know she existed. That was fine, that was normal, that was how things had always been. Did not know how long she sat there crying. Time moved strangely when you were alone. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like nothing at all. The station hummed. The lights stayed dim. The cold seeped into her bones. She thought about the assembly hall where everyone was gathered. She imagined the fleet captain standing on stage, tall and proud, talking about honor and duty and sacrifice. She imagined the soldiers cheering. She imagined the feeling of being part of something bigger. She would never know that feeling. Was just a ghost in a uniform fixing ships that other people would fly, serving a fleet that did not know her name. When the battle came, she would probably die here, alone in this hangar, and nobody would even notice she was gone. The thought should have made her cry harder. Instead, it made her feel empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside her and left only a shell. She did not hear the footsteps approaching. She did not notice the shadow falling over her. She did not know that everything was about to change. Fleet Captain was supposed to be on stage right now. The assembly hall was packed with officers and soldiers. Cameras were broadcasting his face to every ship in the fleet. Admirals were waiting for his words. The entire war effort was holding its breath. And had walked away. His second-in-command, a woman named, had tried to stop him. She had grabbed his arm and whispered urgently about duty and timing and the importance of the moment. Had simply looked at her and said, "Give the preliminary address. I will return." Then he left. This was not strange behavior for those who knew him well understood that he did things differently. He was not like other fleet captains. He did not sit in comfortable rooms giving orders through screens. He walked, he watched, he listened. It was something his grandmother had taught him long ago, back on Earth, back when he was just a boy who loved the sea. She used to say that before any important journey, you must walk among the forgotten places. You must see what others refuse to see. Only then will you understand what you are truly fighting for. Had never forgotten those words. So tonight, while everyone gathered to hear him speak, he walked through the empty corridors of Station 9. He passed through storage rooms and maintenance tunnels. He checked on the kitchen staff working late to feed 2 million people. He spoke briefly with a cleaning crew who nearly fainted when they realized who he was. Then he reached Hangar Bay 17. The bay was dark and cold. Most of the lights were off. The landing craft sat in rows like sleeping giants, their metal bodies gleaming faintly in the dim glow. It should have been empty. But heard something. It was a small sound, almost lost beneath the station's constant hum. A human sound. Someone crying. Not loudly, no, this was the quiet crying of someone who had learned to hide their pain. Someone who did not want to be heard. Followed the sound. He moved between the ships, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The crying grew clearer as he walked. It was coming from behind a battered old shuttle, the kind used for short trips between ships. He found her wedged into a small space between a fuel line and a landing strut. She was wearing a maintenance uniform, stained with grease and oil. Her face was buried in her arms. Her shoulders were shaking. She was so focused on her sorrow that she did not notice him at all. Stood there for a moment watching her. He thought about walking away. This was clearly a private moment. She might be embarrassed if she knew the fleet captain had seen her crying. But he could not leave. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. See what others refused to see. "Technician," he said quietly. She did not respond. She had not heard him. "Technician," he said again, a little louder. The girl looked up. Would never forget the look on her face. It went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. First confusion, who was speaking to her. Then recognition, the uniform, the stars on his collar, the face she had seen on screens. Then terror, the fleet captain was standing 3 meters away from her. Then shame, she had been caught crying like a child. And finally, panic, she had to stand up, salute, explain herself, disappear. She scrambled to her feet so fast that she almost fell over. Her hands were shaking as she tried to salute. Words tumbled out of her mouth without making sense. "Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't, the assembly. I wasn't supposed to, I can explain." "Stop," said. His voice was calm but firm, not angry, not cold, just steady like a rock in a storm. "Sit back down." The girl stared at him with wide eyes. She did not move. "Sit," repeated. "That is an order." She sat. Her legs seemed to give out beneath her. She landed on the metal floor with a small thump, her back against the shuttle's landing strut, her eyes still locked on his face. Did something then that would later become famous, something that soldiers would talk about for years, something that would be written into the history books as the moment everything changed. He sat down across from her. The fleet captain of the Galactic Defense Fleet, commander of 700 ships and 2 million soldiers, sat on the dirty floor of a maintenance hangar like it was the most natural thing in the world. His pristine white uniform pressed against oil stains and metal grating. He did not seem to care. "Tell me your name," he said. The girl opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For a moment thought she might have forgotten her own name. She finally whispered, "Han, technician 3rd class." Han repeated slowly as if he was writing it down in his memory. "That is a good name, strong. It means grace, doesn't it? Grace and warmth." Nodded. She looked like she might start crying again. "Tell me," Han said, leaning back against a fuel container and crossing his arms. "Why are you crying alone in my hangar bay?" The question hung in the air between them. Outside, somewhere far away, the assembly hall was still waiting for their captain. The war was still waiting to begin. The enemy was still coming. But in this small, dark corner of the station, none of that mattered. There was only a girl with tears on her face, a man who had stopped to listen, and a story waiting to be told. Took a shaky breath. And she began to speak. Did not know why she was telling him everything. Maybe it was because he asked. Maybe it was because he sat down beside her like she was a real person, not a piece of furniture. Maybe it was because she had been silent for so long that the words were desperate to escape. Whatever the reason, she told him. She told him about her mother first, about who used to make the best kimchi in their neighborhood, who used to sing old songs while washing dishes, who used to hold face in her hands and call her precious, beautiful, her greatest treasure. Now was dying. The wasting sickness had no cure. It ate away at the body slowly, stealing a little more each day. First the strength in her legs, then the steadiness in her hands, then the memories floating away like leaves in the wind. Had not seen her in 2 years. 2 years of messages that grew shorter and more confused. 2 years of watching her mother fade through a screen while being unable to hold her hand. She told him about the transfer requests, 8 of them. 8 carefully written forms explaining why she needed to go home. 8 polite rejections that said her skills were needed elsewhere. Her skills, as if anyone here actually needed her, as if she would be missed for even a single day. She told him about the loneliness, about eating every meal alone in the corner of the mess hall, about working entire shifts without anyone speaking to her, about the feeling of walking through crowds and having everyone look right through her as if she was made of glass. She told him about her birthday. 3 days from now she would turn 25, a quarter of a century of life, and no one in this entire station, no one in this entire fleet would know. There would be no celebration, no acknowledgement, just another day of being invisible. Finally, she told him the worst thing, the thought that had been eating at her for months. "Sometimes I wonder," she whispered, not looking at him, "if I disappeared completely, would anyone file a report, or would they just forget I ever existed?" The words hung in the air, felt her face burn with shame. She had said too much. She had dumped her pathetic little problems on the fleet captain of the entire Galactic Defense Fleet. He had a war to fight, and she had wasted his time with her tears. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly. "You have important things to do. I shouldn't have." "Do you know why I became fleet captain?" interrupted. Blinked, she shook her head. Was quiet for a moment. His eyes seemed to look at something far away, something that only he could see. "I grew up on an island called," he said. "It is a small place in the ocean, very beautiful. My father was a fisherman. Every day he would take his boat out to sea, and every evening he would come home with fish for dinner. It was a simple life, but a good one." He paused. "When I was 12 years old, I went with him on a trip. We were far from shore when a storm came. The waves were bigger than anything I had ever seen. They rose up like mountains and crashed down like the fists of angry gods." Found herself leaning forward, caught in his words. "Our boat broke apart. One moment I was holding the railing and the next I was in the water. The cold hit me like 1,000 knives. I could not see my father. I could not see anything except black water and white foam." His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes had changed. "I found a piece of wood floating nearby. I held onto it with all my strength, and I waited. For 9 hours I floated in that ocean alone. The sun went down. The stars came out. I was so cold that I stopped shivering. I was so tired that I wanted to let go." He looked directly at. "During those 9 hours I made a promise to myself. If I survived, if somehow I made it through this, I would never let anyone feel as alone as I did in that water. I would see people, really see them. I would make sure that no one under my care ever felt invisible." His breath caught in her throat. "Rescue came at dawn," continued. "They found me barely alive, still clinging to that piece of wood. They never found my father." He was quiet for a moment. The station hummed around them. Somewhere the fleet was still waiting. "I have broken that promise many times," admitted. "I have sent soldiers to die without learning their names. I have ordered retreats that left thousands behind. I have made choices that haunt me every night. Being a captain means making impossible decisions." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "But I will not break that promise when the choice is clear. When I can see someone suffering, truly see them, I will not walk away. Not for a war, not for a speech, not for anything." Felt tears running down her face again, but they were different tears now. Not lonely tears, not hopeless tears, something else, something warmer. "You stopped to find me," she whispered. "Why me? I'm nobody, I'm just a technician." Smiled. It was a kind smile, gentle and real. "There is no such thing as nobody," he said. "Every person is a universe. Every life is a story, and tonight your story needed someone to listen." He stood up and brushed the dust from his uniform. Then he extended his hand toward her. "Come with me, Han." Stared at his hand. "Where?" "To the assembly hall, to the speech, to the place where the fleet is gathered." She shook her head quickly. "I can't. I'm not supposed to. I'm just a maintenance worker. I don't belong there." "You belong," said firmly. "You belong wherever I say you belong. Now take my hand." Slowly, with her heart pounding in her chest, reached out and took it. His grip was warm and strong. He pulled her to her feet with ease. And together, the fleet captain and the forgotten mechanic walked out of the hangar bay. Had no idea what was about to happen. But for the first time in 3 years, she did not feel invisible. The doors of the assembly hall were massive. They rose up like the gates of a castle, made of dark metal and carved with the symbols of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Behind them could hear the murmur of thousands of voices. She stopped walking. Her legs refused to move. "I can't go in there," she said, her voice small. "Everyone will see me. Everyone will wonder why I'm with you. I'm just a technician. I'm covered in grease. I don't." Turned to look at her. His face was calm, patient. "Han," he said, "in about 30 seconds I am going to walk through these doors. I am going to stand on that stage in front of 700 ship captains, 2 million broadcast viewers, and every admiral in the sector. And I am going to introduce you to all of them." His heart stopped. "What?" she whispered. "You heard me. But I didn't do anything. I'm nobody. I just fix ships. Why would you?" "Because," said, "you are exactly what this fleet needs to see." Before she could respond, he pushed open the doors. The noise hit her like a wave. The assembly hall was enormous, a vast space filled with rows and rows of soldiers in uniform. The ceiling arched high above, covered in screens that showed the faces of those watching from ships throughout the fleet. A stage stood at the far end, bright lights shining down on a podium where a woman in officer's uniform had been speaking. The woman stopped mid-sentence when she saw. Every head in the hall turned toward the doors. Wanted to run. She wanted to hide. She wanted to sink through the floor and disappear. But's hand was on her shoulder, guiding her forward, and her legs moved without her permission. The crowd parted as they walked. Soldiers stared. Officers whispered. The screens above flickered as cameras found them and broadcast their faces across the fleet. Kept her eyes on the floor. She could not look up. She could not face all those staring eyes. They reached the stage, climbed the steps easily, followed like a sleepwalker, her mind blank with terror. The woman who had been speaking, realized, the second in command, stepped aside with a look of confusion on her face. Took his place at the podium. The hall fell silent. 2 million people held their breath. "Before I send you to fight," began, his voice steady and strong, "I need you to understand something." He reached out and gently pulled forward until she stood beside him, visible to everyone. "Look at this woman," he said. "Her name is Han. She is a maintenance technician on this station. For 3 years she has served this fleet. She has fixed your ships. She has repaired your equipment. She has kept you alive." His face burned. She wanted to disappear. "And until 30 minutes ago," continued, "no one, not a single person on this entire station, had spoken her name in weeks." The silence in the hall changed. It became heavier, more uncomfortable. "We are about to face said, an enemy that sees us as insects. To them we are disposable, forgettable, beneath notice. They do not care about our names. They do not care about our stories. They do not care that we are human beings with dreams and fears and people who love us." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But if we treat our own people the same way," he said, his voice dropping lower, more serious, "then we have already lost. We are no better than the monsters we fight." Admiral, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, rose from her seat in the front row. "Captain, with respect, the tactical window for our attack is closing. Every hour we delay gives the enemy more time to—" "The can wait," interrupted. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Here is my order," announced, speaking not just to the hall but to every screen, every ship, every soldier in the fleet. "Before we launch a single ship, every commanding officer will learn the name of every person under their command. Every single one." Someone in the back made a noise of disbelief. "I do not care if it takes a day. I do not care if it takes a week. I will not lead 2 million people into battle when half of them feel like ghosts in their own fleet." Turned to look at. His eyes were kind but serious. "Technician Han," he said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "your transfer request to Earth is hereby approved. After this engagement, you will go home to your mother." His knees almost gave out. She grabbed the edge of the podium to steady herself. "Furthermore," continued, "in 3 days it will be your birthday, your 25th, a quarter century of life." How did he remember that? She had only mentioned it once in passing while crying in that dark hangar. "On that day," said, "this fleet will sing for you, every ship, every soldier, every officer. We will sing and you will know that you are seen, that you matter, that you are not alone." He turned back to face the crowd. "This is not a request. This is an order from your fleet captain. Does anyone have objections? No one spoke, no one dared. Then let us begin, said. Let us learn each other's names. Let us remember why we fight. And when we finally face let us show them what it means to be human. He stepped back from the podium. For a moment there was only silence. Then somewhere in the crowd, a soldier stood up. He turned to the person next to him, someone he had probably never spoken to before, and extended his hand. He said, what's your name? Another soldier stood, then another, then 10, then 50, then hundreds. The assembly hall filled with the sound of voices as people introduced themselves to each other, some for the first time ever. Stood on that stage, tears streaming down her face, and watched as the fleet began to change. For the first time in 3 years, she did not feel invisible. For the first time in 3 years, she felt human. The 3 days before the battle changed everything. In the mess halls, officers sat with enlisted soldiers. In the hangars, pilots learned the names of the mechanics who kept their ships flying. In the medical bays, doctors talked to nurses they had worked beside for years but never really known. Stories were shared. Memories were exchanged. A soldier from the outer colonies discovered that the cook who made his breakfast every day had grown up in the same small town as his grandmother. An engineer found out that the quiet woman who cleaned his workspace had once been a concert pianist before the war took everything from her. Admiral, who had questioned the delay, spent an entire evening walking through her flagship and learning the name of every single crew member. She discovered that her ship had 3 poets, 7 musicians, 2 former teachers, and a man who had once won a cooking competition on Earth. She had commanded these people for 2 years without knowing any of this. By the 3rd day, the fleet was different. It was not just an army anymore. It was a family. Spent those days in a daze. People kept coming up to her, strangers she had never met, just to introduce themselves, to shake her hand, to thank her for her work. They looked at her like she was important, like she was real. She did not know how to handle it. On the morning of her birthday, she woke up to a message on her screen. It was from her mother. His face was thin and tired, but she was smiling. "My precious girl," she said in the recording, "I heard what happened. Everyone is talking about it. The fleet captain himself stood up for my daughter." Her eyes were wet with tears. "I always knew you were special. Come home soon. I will be waiting." Watched the message 17 times before she could stop crying. They arrived at noon. They came out of hyperspace like a swarm of locusts, thousands of dark ships blocking out the stars. Their weapons began charging immediately. Their communications were silent. They did not bother to send warnings or demands. To them, humans were simply pests to be destroyed. But they had made a mistake. They thought they were attacking a fleet. They were wrong. They were attacking a family. The battle was brutal. Weapons were powerful and their ships were fast. In the first hour, humanity lost 40 vessels. Fireballs bloomed in the darkness of space as good people died. But something strange was happening, something they had never seen before. Human pilots threw themselves into impossible positions to protect ships they would have ignored 3 days ago. A cruiser captain named rammed his damaged vessel into a carrier to save a transport ship full of wounded soldiers he had personally met the night before. A squadron of fighters led by a woman named held a defensive line for 40 minutes against overwhelming odds because, as she said over the radio, "From engine room 3 is on that station, and I promised to teach her how to play guitar after the war." They did not understand. Their tactical computers could not calculate why humans were fighting this way. It made no sense. It was illogical. It was inefficient. It was also unstoppable. As the battle raged, found herself in the observation deck of the command ship. She had been invited there by himself, given a front row seat to watch the engagement. Screens covered every wall, showing different angles of the fight. She watched humans die. She watched humans kill. She watched the cold mathematics of war play out in fire and metal. But she also watched something else. She watched crews cheer each other on by name. She watched captains scream encouragement to soldiers they had spoken to for the first time just days ago. She watched a fleet fight not for duty or for orders, but for each other. By evening, it was over. The Armada was destroyed. Not easily, never easily, but completely. Their ships floated dead in space, their weapons silent, their threat ended. Humanity had won. But the celebration did not start with cheers or speeches or fireworks. It started with a song. At exactly midnight, the moment's birthday officially began, a signal broadcast across the fleet. It was not tactical. It was not strategic. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Music began to play. A simple melody, ancient and familiar. A song that every human knew, no matter where they came from. And then the voices started. They came from every ship in the fleet. 2 million voices singing together across the emptiness of space. Some were off-key. Some barely knew the words, but they sang anyway with everything they had. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you. Stood at the observation window, looking out at the stars, and cried. The tears floated in the zero gravity, drifting away like tiny diamonds. She felt a presence beside her, had come to stand next to her, his uniform singed from a fire that had broken out on the bridge during the battle, his face tired but peaceful. You stopped a war for me, whispered. You made the entire fleet wait. Why? Did not answer right away. He watched the stars with her, listening to the song that echoed through every speaker on every ship. Because, he finally said, the universe is vast and cold. It wants us to forget each other. It wants us to feel small and alone. Every time we refuse, every time we stop to see one person, truly see them, we become something the darkness cannot defeat. He smiled, a real smile, warm and human. Besides, he added, no one should cry alone on their birthday. Laughed through her tears. It was the first time she had laughed in months, maybe years. The song faded. The fleet fell quiet, but the feeling remained, a warmth that filled the space between the stars. Thought about her mother, waiting for her on Earth. She thought about all the people who had introduced themselves to her over the past 3 days. She thought about the pilots who had fought and died so that others could live. She was not invisible anymore. She never would be again. Thank you, she said for seeing me. He nodded, thank you for being worth seeing. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere across the vastness of space, a new story was being written. A story about a girl who cried alone in a hangar and the captain who stopped a war for her. A story that would be told for generations, passed down from parent to child, a reminder of what it meant to be human. Not the technology, not the weapons, not the ships. The stubborn, beautiful refusal to let a single soul be forgotten. That was humanity's greatest strength. And it always would be.